So hi everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk here today. I think I've already kind of said to the chat and like the people online that I get quite nervous when I do these talks. I always say yes to them, and then I get to the point where I'm giving the talk and I think why would I say yes to this? But I've done a few talks kind of similar before, and I think it's really important to share like stories and to like be really good representation, which I think is something that Anna spoke really well about in her talk, how important representation is. And I also love giving these talks because it gives me a nice reminder of like the things that I've achieved and what's happened since the last talk I gave. So quickly, as an introduction to my talk, I'm going to talk about myself and my like queer identity as I was growing up. And then for the biologists in the room, I'm going to do a quick info about my research at Exeter, and then the kind of work that I do now in Berkshire. And then I'm going to talk about like the importance of like representation and inclusion. And I did promise in my abstract for this talk that there were going to be pictures of my dog. Here is the first one. The great news for everybody is that because I'm at home, I actually have my dog on my lap with me. So he will almost definitely pop up and make an appearance later. He's having a bit of a snooze right now. But yes, here is my beautiful dog. You'll hear so much about him in this talk. I barely talk about myself. I mostly just talk about him. So who am I? I am Megan. I work as a clinical scientist trainee in the NHS in Berkshire. I'm gay and my pronouns are she, her, and they, them. I used to be a student at Exeter from about 2018 to about 2021. So I did an undergrad, spoilers. I did an undergrad degree in biological sciences with a specialism in microbiology and infectious diseases, which is a mouthful. And then I did like a year in a research master's here. I now work for Frimley Health NHS Foundation Trust Frimley is in Surrey, but as part of my work, we are like Berkshire and Surrey Pathology Services, which I'm going to shorten to BSPS. So all of the pathology that happens across Berkshire and Surrey is all grouped into our like one group. So in my lab, we do all of the microbiology for the whole of Berkshire, even though Frimley is in Surrey. Don't ask. And at BSPS, we have nearly 900 tests that we can perform across all of histology, microbiology, virology, cytology, hematology, and any of the other ologies that I've forgotten. So we're quite a big network, and there are lots of labs that are included in us. I am also a scuba diver. This is actually me, but you wouldn't be able to tell because I'm all geared up, but I promise it's me. And of course, I am also a very hardworking scientist. So I genetically engineered these bacteria when I was working in research to make this beautiful rainbow agar plate to kill some time while I was in the lab. For a very important project that I was working really hard on. And I'm just so proud of it. I put it in every talk. It doesn't matter how old it is. I love this plate so much. So growing up, here's a lovely little picture of me. I grew up in Taunton in Somerset. I have always loved dogs, as you can see from this photo, but also everything that I speak about in every setting ever. So this is a photo of me in Taunton in the they have like a rainbow path that's a progress flag that they installed recently. According to the local newspaper, it is the longest progress flag pathway in the entire world. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what the local paper claims. And I think I've always had a really curious mind. And in that way, I think being a scientist has always been really innate in me. When I was 8 or 9, I got a light microscope for my birthday, and I used it to look at snowflakes and water drops and celery and insect wings and anything that I could get my hands on. And around that age, I also told people that I wanted to be a man because men were the only people who had wives. And at the time, no one really questioned that because kids will say silly things. But I've not actually really changed that much about my plans. I often say that my life goals are having a beautiful wife and a beautiful dog, and the rest is negotiable. And as you might have gathered, I am in the amazingly lucky position to be able to say that I've achieved one of those goals. So here is a quick dog pic interlude. So this is my wonderful dog. He is the love of my life and genuinely my life's work. So we'll just have some photos of him. He is very beautiful. This is him at Christmas. He's very tired. He's just, he's such a beautiful dog. I love him so much. And there will be more photos of him later in the talk, I promise. So when I was 13, which was about a decade ago now, which is quite scary, gay marriage was legalized in the UK. And for the first time, the people around me were talking about the idea that women could marry women and men could marry men. And I started questioning that kind of compulsive heteronormativity, and eventually around that time came out to myself. Since then, my label has changed and evolved with me, and I now identify as a queer and non-binary person. And I think it's important to say that coming out is always a process, and this is actually the first public space that I have said that I am non-binary. Feels quite scary to say that out loud, but I am non-binary and my pronouns are she, they. So anyone who has had to question heteronormativity and reevaluate who they are will know that it can be really difficult and quite emotional sometimes. Throughout this journey, I definitely found myself throwing myself into academia, particularly into science, which helped me to cope with the anxiety that I felt around trying to work out who I was. And I think a very important part of my journey was my innate curiosity. It's really important, obviously, to be curious in scientific research. I think any researchers or anyone who has any research background will know that it's so important to be able to be curious in research. But I think it's equally as important in clinical work. And I think those two places also helped me learn how to be curious in understanding my identity as well. And here is a picture of me in Exeter Pride in 2022, I think, holding the University of Exeter banner, which I'm just really chuffed about. I was so pleased that they let me do that. So I'll talk a little bit about my research in Exeter. I invited my supervisor to this talk and he didn't come, so I can make it really simple because he's not here to judge it. So I worked in Exeter microbiology research for about a year, and I researched the formation of biofilms, which is basically this system of bacterial cells and bacterial cell gunk or cell stuff, which are the technical terms for that. They produce these biofilms to help keep them safe, and I have described it before as the bacteria putting on a camouflage, waterproof coat. So many bacteria, in fact most bacteria as well as fungi, in response to stresses, not like a work report being due, but an antibiotic treatment or a immune cell, will form these biofilms, these camouflage raincoats. So the kind of waterproof aspect of the raincoat is being shielded from antibiotics. So there are very few antibiotics that can penetrate into a biofilm. They just kind of roll right off the top, like a waterproof, like water rolling off a coat. And the camouflage aspect of this is in respect to our immune cells. So our immune cells can't recognize the bacteria very well, or can't kind of notice them when they're in these biofilms. So you can imagine then in my new job as a microbiologist, where my whole role is to fight the bacteria, giving them a camouflage raincoat is really bad news. And if they do this in response to being in a body or being exposed to antibiotics, it makes it very hard to fight them. So my research was mostly looking at ways that we can use antibiotics in a way that can kill bacteria without them noticing them and putting on this raincoat, to allow us to keep fighting them. And a kind of secondary part of my research was also looking at researching new methods to quantify biofilm in higher throughput systems, so making the systems that we use to research these raincoats more effective. And about a year into my research, I was offered a wonderful job in the NHS, what I considered to be my dream route, which was a place on the scientific training, or the scientist training program, to train as a clinical microbiologist. I was very torn about whether to take it or not. I struggled with the change and the idea of like moving my whole life. But I knew that the move to the NHS and the move to Berkshire would give me enough money, not necessarily enough time, but enough money to have a dog. And so here is the next dog pictures interlude, because I cannot stress this enough. He is the love of my life. This was the day that I first met him, when we were adopting him. He is such a sweetheart and I love him so much. This was him when he was first at home, and then our first beach day together. And I mean this, he is the love of my life. He is my life's work, and he is the best dog ever. So yes, I moved across the country to Berkshire and began training to be a clinical microbiologist. So I think job titles are generally kind of nonsense and mean very little. So what being a clinical scientist or clinical microbiologist entails is a lot of rotations across different hospitals in the area and in the UK, looking and learning about patient care and microbiology as like one setting. So a lot of my work has been in the lab. This is one of the pictures of the lab. I have another one as well. Dealing with a huge volume of samples daily. So something in the realm of about 2,000 samples a day go through our lab. I often describe the scope of our samples as if it could have been in or on a person at any time, we will probably test it. And what we're testing for in microbiology is any virus, bacteria, fungus, or parasite that could be causing a problem in your life. So healthcare science actually provides over 80% of the diagnoses across the NHS. So when a doctor says, I think you've got this, they will almost always, or in 80% of the cases, send it off to pathology and will say yes or no. And I think I said earlier that we have over 900 tests in the pathology services that we can employ. I'm not going to go into all the samples we test because I don't want to upset anyone if they're squeamish, but if you are interested in horrible, gross things, please come and talk to me afterwards. I would love to tell you. And clinical microbiology really desensitizes you to anything grim. Yeah, I think I've got a little bit here, but I think I'm going to skip over it. Within my job, it's very important to be curious. It's not just about what a patient might have, but also where they may have got it from, whether they passed it on to anybody, how to treat it, what we can do if treatment isn't working, how to manage other medications alongside antibiotics to ensure that they're able to work, and so much more. And this kind of curiosity, which is, I think, quite a major part of my identity, has followed me throughout my life. Understanding the way that molecules and cells and systems work in as much detail as I can get gave me the skills to dive more deeply into my identity and to learn about myself and come to the conclusions that I have about who I am. And I think in the same way that science is embedded in every structure and process around us, my identity and particularly my queerness really seeps into everything that I do. I'm aware that I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to skip over this slightly, but I think it's important to say that like inclusivity is very important to me, and it underpins a lot of my work in the same way that my identity does. So when I was in Exeter, I worked in Exeter Student Nightline, which is a listening service similar to the Samaritans. And I now also volunteer for London Nightline, now that I'm a student in London. I'm also a mental health first aider at work, which is like a nationally recognised programme. I have attended various systems for like inclusive education, and I also am involved in my staff's LGBT network, or LGBTQ plus network, I should say. And we are always very interested in speakers. If anyone is wishing they were where I am now, it's great fun. We would love to have you to speak with us. And I think this is possibly the most important slide for me. I want to talk about the important people in my life who have been fantastic representations of being queer. I think it's important to say that these people have both given me permission to share this part of the talk. Being open is important, but not outing people is also really important. So I spoke to both of these people before I made the slides and made sure that they were okay with this. So the first person I want to talk about is my tutor during my undergrad degree, Dr. Helen Dorr, who used to work at the University of Exeter and has now moved on to work somewhere else, which has slipped my mind. She was the first kind of openly gay adult that I met, and she talked very openly about how much she loves her wife, and is just like an amazingly successful scientist and a wonderful advocate for others. And she really showed me that being open in science, and especially in like a professional environment, wasn't scary, and really helped me to grow my confidence, both to be myself and to speak about myself. And I know that I would never have done a talk like this before I met her. She's just fantastic, and she was such an inspiration to me. The second person I want to talk about is my sister, who is an absolute queer icon. She lives with her beautiful wife and their 3 beautiful cats. One of you can see here. This is Pecan. She is gorgeous. She's one of the most beautiful cats I've ever met. My sister is amazing and so open and happy being herself. And she is also like fantastically inclusive. And it's so beautiful to see her and her wife making the world a better place every day, and in everything they do. And they are such inspirations to me. So kind of finally, I think if 18-year-old me could see me now wearing a rainbow lanyard all the time, going to talk, giving talks, I have almost no doubt that she would have a huge panic attack. I have come a really long way in the last 4, 5, how long has it been since I was 18? 5 years. And while my curiosity and my queerness were always a huge part of me, I hid those things for a really long time, both from myself and from everybody around me. But being accepted and feeling safe and like I belong is the most magical feeling. I'm so much further than I ever thought I'd get. And I owe a lot of that to the people in my life who were open and comfortable in sharing their stories and their experiences. And I hope that by being like comfortable and open and out today, I can be the person that I really needed when I was 18. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now, find me later, email me. And if you have any feedback, I'm just going to leave this here. Thank you very much.